So sometimes we wore funny hats to say this scene we don't like. They don't like this one.
We just did this thing. That was when they were going to sue us for.
They burst through the apartment door, delivered one line, and the entire soundstage detonated. Not a polite chuckle, an all-out, roof-raising, tears-down-the-face explosion of laughter that stopped filming cold. That single moment happened hundreds of times across 8 seasons, yet every single occurrence felt like the first. Lenny and Squiggy weren't written as stars. They weren't even written as regulars at first. They were supposed to be a one-shot gag, 2 greasy neighborhood creeps who would appear once, get a cheap laugh, and disappear forever. Instead, they became the most quoted, most imitated, most beloved scene stealers in the history of American sitcoms. And it all began, of all places, in Penny Marshall's living room. Los Angeles, 1975. Penny Marshall and Rob Reiner's house in the hills was the kind of place where the phone never stopped ringing and the doorbell never stopped opening. On any given night you might find Gary Marshall, Art Garfunkel, Carrie Fisher, a young unknown named Robin Williams, or half the writing staff of Happy Days sprawled across the couches, arguing about baseball, doing bits, and drinking whatever was cold. Penny and Rob collected funny people the way other people collect art. One of those nights, nobody remembers the exact date, 2 regulars from the Los Angeles comedy underground showed up, David Lander and Michael McKean. They had been performing together for years, first in the legendary improv troupe The Credibility Gap, a West Coast answer to Second City and the Firesign Theater, then in small clubs and on radio. They were brilliant, fearless, and completely unknown to television audiences. Halfway through the evening, as the room loosened up with wine and stories, David and Michael did what they always did when they sense an audience. They slipped into characters they had been developing for years. 2 hopelessly deluded, leather-jacketed, pompadour sporting losers from the wrong side of Milwaukee who believed they were God's gift to women, music, and basically everything else. 1 second they were David and Michael, the next they were Lenny Kosnowski and Andrew Squigman, greeting the room with a nasal, synchronized, hello. The effect was instantaneous. Penny dropped her drink. Cindy Williams, who happened to be there that night, doubled over. Rob Reiner laughed so hard he fell off the couch. People who were mid-sentence forgot what they were saying. It wasn't polite cocktail party laughter. It was the kind of helpless surrender comics dream about. Penny turned to Cindy and said, "We have to get these 2 in front of Gary. Tomorrow." There was no formal audition. No headshots, no agent calls, no casting director. Just Penny grabbing her brother by the sleeve the next day on the Paramount lot and dragging him to stage 19, where Laverne and Shirley was blocking its 3rd or 4th episode. David and Michael were told to do the thing you did at my house. They walked onto the bare set, the crew still setting lights, and recreated the living room bit. Gary Marshall watched for exactly 12 seconds, turned to his writing staff, and said, "We're rewriting the episode tonight. These 2 are in it." That is literally how it happened. No competition, no callbacks, no network approval. Just instinct, opportunity, and 2 performers so undeniably electric that an entire show bent itself around them overnight. The original script called the characters Lenny and Anthony, 2 more Italian-American neighborhood guys who would harass Laverne and Shirley exactly once and then vanish. The problem? The show already had Frank DeFazio, Phil Foster, Carmine, the Big Ragu Ragusa, Eddie Mecca, and an Italian-American flavor so thick you could smell the Sunday gravy through the television screen. Gary took one look at the breakdown and said, "We've got too many Italians. One of them has to go." Michael McKean's character, originally Anthony, was the one who got the makeover. Out went the Italian surname and accent. In came Andrew Squiggy Squigman, a name that sounded like a sneeze, and a cartoon character had a baby. The nationality was left deliberately vague, somewhere east of Pittsburgh and west of Transylvania, McKean later joked. The name change did more than avoid ethnic overlap. It untethered the character from any obligation to reality. Squiggy didn't have to make sense. He just had to be Squiggy. Lenny's full name stayed Leonard Lenny Kosnowski, a surname Penny Marshall gleefully claimed was Polish for, "Help, there's a hog in my kitchen." The names alone became punchlines before the actors even opened their mouths. Walk onto the set and the audience was already primed. Here comes trouble, and its name is ridiculous. Cindy Williams remembered the exact moment she realized the rename had changed everything. The second they walked in as Lenny and Squiggy, not Lenny and Anthony, the energy in the room shifted. The names were funny. The names promised chaos. And they delivered every single time. Gary Marshall didn't guess. He calculated. He believed every successful sitcom needed a clearly defined ladder of social competence. At the top, characters who were slightly more together than the leads. Think Fonzie towering over Richie Cunningham. At the bottom, characters so hopelessly inept that the heroes looked like Rhodes Scholars by comparison. Laverne and Shirley were already lovable underdogs, two working-class women trying to make it on their own in late 1950s Milwaukee. They needed someone beneath them on the ladder, someone who made bottle capping at Schatz Brewery look like a Nobel Prize pursuit. Lenny and Squiggy were custom-built for the bottom rung. Somebody's gotta be worse than you, Gary liked to say. It wasn't cruelty, it was architecture. Lenny and Squiggy were the pressure release valve. No matter how bad Laverne and Shirley's day got, lost jobs, broken hearts, money troubles, two greasy idiots were always waiting upstairs to remind everyone that yes, it could be worse. Much worse. Michael McKean understood the assignment perfectly. We were the chaos that made their normal look sane. And we loved being the bottom of the ladder. The view from down there was hilarious. Some moments in television are so perfect they become part of the cultural DNA. The Fonzie motorcycle jump. Kramer's slide through Jerry's door. Lucy in the chocolate factory. And then there is the Lenny and Squiggy entrance. It always began the same way, a slow creak of the apartment door. The audience started laughing at the creak. They knew. Then the pause, just long enough for anticipation to become unbearable. Lenny first, tall and vacant, greasy blonde hair sculpted into a pompadour that defied gravity and taste. Then Squiggy, shorter, darker, shoulders hunched forward like a vulture in a leather jacket, chin jutting, lower lip curled in permanent disdain. Another beat of silence. And then, in perfect nasal unison, "Hello." The roof came off. Every single time. Cindy Williams called it controlled chaos disguised as a happy accident. David Lander and Michael McKean rehearsed that entrance the way ballet dancers rehearse a lift, down to the inch, down to the half-second. Where they placed their feet. How far they leaned. The exact length of the stare. The micro-pause before the word. It looked spontaneous because it was engineered to the millimeter. Sometimes they pushed it further. McKean remembered nights when they would fling the door open and simply stand there. No dialogue, no movement, just the two of them framed in the doorway like a demented painting. The audience would scream with laughter at the sheer anticipation. That, he said, was when we knew we owned the room. Keeping a straight face opposite Lenny and Squiggy became the ultimate test of professional discipline. Penny Marshall joked that she and Cindy should have received combat pay. "I bit a hole clean through my tongue on more than one occasion," she admitted in her memoir. And it was still worth it. David and Michael improvised relentlessly. Little ad-libs, weird noises, random physical bits, but always within Gary's rigid timing structure. A flubbed line wasn't a mistake, it was an opportunity. One night Squiggy's pompadour actually collapsed mid-scene, sliding down his forehead like a dying caterpillar. Instead of breaking character, Lander incorporated it, patting the hair back into place while delivering his line in a wounded whine. The take was unusable because the crew was laughing too hard, but the bit stayed in the live audience's memory forever. Cindy and Penny developed survival strategies. Never make eye contact. Ever. Bite the inside of your cheek until it bleeds. Focus on a neutral spot on the wall and pray, if all else fails, turn your back to them and pretend to look for something in the refrigerator. Penny's pre-scene mantra to Cindy became legendary. Whatever you do, don't look at them. Just don't. The crew wasn't much help. Camera operators shook so hard the frame wobbled. Sound men laughed into their sleeves. One boom operator was caught on a hot mic whispering, "I can't breathe," during a take. Gary Marshall finally instituted a rule. If the camera shook too much because of laughter, the operator had to buy coffee for the entire crew the next morning. It didn't help. Lenny and Squiggy were never intended to be icons. They were a happy accident, a living room bit that refused to stay contained. They started as a one-episode gag and ended up defining an era of television comedy. Their influence is everywhere. Beavis and Butthead, Jay and Silent Bob, Statler and Waldorf, even Rick and Morty owe a debt to the template Lander and McKean perfected. They proved that secondary characters could become the beating heart of a show. That perfect timing plus pure weirdness equals immortality. That sometimes the funniest thing in the room isn't the star, it's the two lunatics who just kicked the door down. 8 seasons. Over 200 episodes. Thousands of hello-s. And every single one started the same way it did that night in Penny Marshall's living room. 2 friends, one ridiculous idea, and the unshakable belief that if they committed hard enough, the whole world would laugh with them.